Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're tackling a really interesting source you sent over. It's this book that weaves together a few different strands.
Yeah, it's quite unique. It takes the life of this scientist, David Starr Jordan,
Right.
and sort of braids it with the author's own personal story, plus a lot of scientific history and philosophy, too.
And the mission for this deep dive, what you wanted us to unpack, was really about Jordan's resilience, I suppose.
That's a big part of it, yeah. How he dealt with loss, repeated loss, actually, but also the darker side, his involvement in eugenics.
Which is a tough subject.
A very tough subject. And then there's the author, Lulu Miller, and how she uses Jordan's story and her own heartbreak to think about, well, the big stuff. Loss, love, meaning.
And she draws on quite a mix of things, doesn't she? Jordan's own writings.
His memoirs, scientific papers, yeah, even children's stories he wrote, apparently.
Wow, okay. And Miller mixes that with her own reflections.
Exactly. It's quite a blend.
Okay, so let's start with Jordan himself. This resilience seems almost legendary.
It really does. The book kicks off with this incredible image, the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, total devastation.
And it just wipes out his huge fish collection at Stanford. Years, decades of work. Just chaos.
And most people would just be crushed.
Right? You'd think so. But Jordan, he apparently gets down on the floor amidst all the broken jars and mangled fish with a sewing needle.
A sewing needle?
Yeah. Trying to reattach the little paper identification tags to the fish, sewing them directly onto the skin.
Wow. That image.
Yeah.
It just sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That refusal to just give up, even when faced with, well, utter chaos.
Absolutely. And the author, Miller, she really grabs onto that. She's going through her own stuff, her own heartbreak, and she sees Jordan's persistence as maybe a way through, or at least something to understand.
Is it just persistence, though? Or is it something else, like a need for control, maybe? The book kind of questions that, right?
Yeah.
If it was entirely healthy.
It does. It delves into where that drive might have come from. Even as a kid, he was obsessed with nature, collecting wildflowers, but secretly, because his parents didn't approve.
Really?
Yeah. And he was really inspired by this self-taught botanist, Joshua Ellenwood. That meeting kind of shifted things for him.
How so?
Well, it wasn't just about pretty flowers anymore. He started looking for the underlying pattern, the blueprint, Even in flowers he called dull and ugly, seeking order.
That need for order seems key. And then there was the death of his brother Rufus. That hit him hard.
Profoundly. And Miller suggests he channeled that grief into his nature drawings, incredibly detailed drawings.
Like the act of drawing, of naming things scientifically.
Exactly, giving them Latin names, which he said felt like honey on my lips. It was a way to perhaps feel some mastery over a world that suddenly felt terrifyingly random, a way to find solace in structure.
And you see that pattern continue in his academic life too, right? He struggled at first.
He did, yeah, despite the passion. But then he found Louis Agassiz. Agassiz's summer school on Pinocchio's Island was apparently transformative for him.
Agassiz, the famous naturalist.
The very one. Agassiz really emphasized direct observation, just looking closely at the thing itself, and that really clicked with Jordan's own inclinations, gave him a method, a framework.
And things took off for him after that.
Pretty quickly, yeah. He got married to Susan Bowen, became the youngest university president in the country at the time.
And got the famous mustache.
Chuckles slightly.
Yeah.
And got the mustache, yes. Almost like a symbol of his growing status.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were major setbacks.
Yeah.
That fire.
Oh, yeah. The fire in 1883 destroyed another huge collection, years of unpublished work, just devastating.
And again, his reaction.
Back to the field, started rebuilding almost immediately. It's quite extraordinary.
It really is. And then his first wife, Susan, dies. He remarries fairly quickly to Jessie Knight. And he develops this idea, his own term, this shield of optimism.
Right. As if he could just will himself through tragedy, block it out almost. He was incredibly persuasive, too, managed to get the Stanfords to fund his big research plans.
Leading to the Hopkins Seaside Lab.
Exactly. And interestingly, Stanford also put up a statue of his mentor, Louis Agassiz.
Which becomes kind of ironic later, given Agassiz's other views.
Deeply ironic, yes. But at the time, Jordan clearly revered him.
And the book gives these glimpses of his work ethic, right? Like the Samoa trip.
Yeah, with Jessie. Just constantly collecting, classifying, naming species. Hundreds of them named after him or people he knew. It shows that drive, that need to impose order, to categorize everything.
Which brings us back full circle to 1906, the earthquake, Stanford again.
His second major collection destroyed. Chaos reigns again, and that image of the Agassiz statue.
Toppled over headfirst in the rubble.
Yeah. It's incredibly symbolic, isn't it? Like the foundations are literally shaken.
But Jordan's first thought isn't despair.
Nope. His immediate reaction is practical. Keep the remaining specimens wet. Save what can be saved. Miller calls it a glimpse of the true bones of persistence.
And then he's back with a needle and thread.
Back with the needle, sewing tags onto fish. This tiny act against this massive destruction. It's the ultimate symbol of his fight against chaos.
But the book suggests this relentless focus, this resilience, maybe masked the grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. He lost his daughter Barbara, too.
Exactly. It acknowledges the strength, but also questions it. Was the constant work also a way to avoid confronting the pain, to maintain control when personal life felt uncontrollable?
It's a really complex portrait, which leads us into probably the most difficult part of his story, eugenics.
Yeah, and this is where the influence of Agassiz gets really dark.
Because Agassiz wasn't just about observing nature.
No. He had these deeply racist ideas about a hierarchy of species, promoting polygenism, the idea that different human races were actually different species.
And placing black people at the bottom is subhuman. It's horrific.
Truly horrific. And what's so disturbing, as the book points out, is that Jordan, a trained scientist, someone wary of what he called philosophy.
Sagacity. Like fake wisdom, believing things you know aren't true.
Pretty much, yeah. Despite that skepticism, he became a really early and enthusiastic supporter of eugenics, influenced by people like Francis Galton.
He just bought into it. The idea that things like pauperism or degeneracy were inherited traits.
Wholeheartedly. And he didn't just believe it, he actively promoted it, advocated for, in his words, exterminating the unfit.
Exterminating, it's chilling language. Miller includes quotes from his speeches, right? About the human harvest.
Yes. It's hard to read. He saw it as improving the human stock, like breeding cattle.
And this wasn't just talk. These ideas had real devastating consequences in America.
Oh, absolutely. The book makes that terrifyingly clear. Forced sterilizations became widespread. Infants born with disabilities were sometimes just left to die.
And it targeted marginalized groups disproportionately.
Massively. And Jordan was directly involved in making it legal. He helped push through the first eugenic sterilization law in Indiana in 1907, and then later in California.
It's shocking how mainstream it became. People like Madison Grant writing bestsellers about it.
And even getting praise from Nazi Germany later on. It's a really dark chapter in American history.
Even while some scientists were starting to push back, questioning the whole idea.
Yeah, thankfully, people started emphasizing environment, nurture over just nature, challenging this whole concept of degeneration. But the momentum was already strong.
And the book talks about the Buck v. Bell case.
Yes, the Supreme Court case that upheld sterilization laws. Carrie Buck's story is just heartbreaking. A direct result of the kind of thinking Jordan championed.
And the definition of unfit was so broad and, frankly, biased.
Appallingly so. Young women seen as promiscuous, immigrants, people who just didn't fit social norms, and women of color were targeted at vastly higher rates.
Miller really brings the human cost home with the story of Anna and Mary, doesn't she?
She does. These two women in the Virginia State Colony for epileptics and feeble-minded, their experiences, forced sterilization, mistreatment, just being stripped of their basic rights, it makes the abstract horror of eugenics painfully real.
It contrasts so sharply with the cold, pseudoscientific justifications.
Completely. And Miller highlights their resilience, too, their bond, the community they built even within that awful place and after they got out. It shows the inherent value in the lives the eugenicists dismissed as unworthy.
It's a powerful counter-narrative, which leads us to the author's own part in the book, her personal reflections.
Right. Miller weaves her own story of heartbreak throughout, and that experience makes her question Jordan's relentless drive for order.
She starts to see the limits of it.
Exactly. She talks about the vanity of classification, and she brings in this big shift in biology cladistics.
Cladistics. Okay, what's the key idea there?
Well, it's about understanding evolutionary relationships based on shared ancestry, not just superficial similarities. And one of the big revelations was that some of our most basic categories, they don't hold up.
Like fish.
Like fish, yeah. It turns out, scientifically speaking, based on evolutionary lineage, there's no such single group as fish. Some fish are more closely related to us mammals than they are to other fish.
Okay, that kind of blows up Jordan's whole life's work, doesn't it? his meticulous classifying of fish.
It really challenges it. It highlights how we humans try to impose these neat boxes on a world that's much messier, more fluid, more interconnected.
So it gets at that core tension again. Chaos versus order.
Precisely. Miller starts to wonder if maybe embracing the chaos, accepting it, is actually the key. That maybe there's a different kind of order hidden within the mess, one you can only see if you stop fighting it so hard.
That's a very different perspective from Jordan's shield of optimism.
Very different. And she explores ideas like grit, too, but maybe reframes it slightly. She also looks at self-deception.
The pros and cons.
Yeah. Like studies suggesting positive illusions can sometimes help us cope, keep us motivated, but also the dangers, right? The overconfidence, the denial, maybe like Jordan's denial about the flaws in eugenics.
Which points to the need for a questioning spirit, I suppose.
Absolutely. That's crucial. Miller contrasts Jordan's certainty, especially about eugenics, with how science actually progresses by questioning, by overturning old ideas. Both his classification system and eugenics were eventually dismantled by new evidence, new ways of thinking.
It underlines how science evolves. And it connects back to that ladder of life idea, right? The fallacy underpinning eugenics.
Yes. That idea of a simple hierarchy with humans at the top, cladistics totally dismantles that too. It shows evolution is more like a branching bush, not a ladder. Everything's interconnected, not ranked in value.
And Miller finds her own path through this, connecting her personal loss to these bigger ideas.
She does. There's this beautiful part near the end where she has this experience in the ocean relating to these non-fish. And it seems to symbolize her finding a new way to understand connection, love, life itself. Not through rigid order, but through embracing the complexity, the chaos even.
Finding meaning within it, rather than fighting against it.
Exactly. Finding hope there.
So the book really is this intricate weave, isn't it? Jordan's life, the science, the dark history, the author's own search.
It's a powerful mix. It makes you think about resilience, but also its potential shadow side. About the terrible consequences when science gets twisted by prejudice, about how we try to categorize the world and maybe how limiting that can be.
And about finding maybe a different kind of order in the middle of what feels like chaos.
Yeah, it really leaves you pondering.
And it ends with that incredibly stark quote, doesn't it? You included it in the notes.
Oh, yeah. It's unforgettable. Should I read the translation? Okay. Chaos will devour them. Chaos will strike them down from the outside, with a falling branch, a speeding car, a bullet, or undermine them from within, causing their own cells to rebel. Chaos will rot your plants, kill your dog, rust your bicycle. It'll erode your most precious memories, overthrow your favorite cities, destroy any refuge you can build. It is not a question of if, but when. Chaos is the only certain thing in this world. It is the master that rules us all.
Wow. That's bleak, but also kind of bracingly honest.
It is. It really forces you to confront that reality. It certainly makes you think about your own relationship with trying to keep things ordered versus accepting the inevitable messiness of life.
A lot to chew on there. Thanks for bringing this one to the deep dive.
My pleasure. It was fascinating to revisit.